At global level, it is becoming increasingly clear that the human species does not have sufficient perceptual and conceptual capacity in order to respond to the context that it has generated. And when I talk about the context that it has generated, what I am referring to is the fact that the species has destabilized the dynamic equilibrium of earth processes, and as a result caused their volatilities to increase, giving rise to greater and greater hazards, the impact of which cause disasters. And in order to respond effectively to this context, the human species has to devise the structures, the processes, and the technologies that can guide these planetary processes that it has destabilized or disequilibrated to new states of dynamic equilibrium that not only permit the continued survival and well-being of the species and the planet, but also provide for their continued evolution. As I said, the human species is hard pressed to mobilize the perceptual and conceptual capacities and strategic competencies required to successfully make this required response to the current context. Now, because I am aware of this situation, I was very glad to see our Minister for Finance extend an invitation to the general public to send in their recommendations for inclusion in the budget of 2016. That is a profound gesture that I personally very deeply appreciate, because it implies an understanding of the fact that I just mentioned, that no one person or no one group of people or no one community or no one religion or no one nation can on its own formulate and advance the kind of responses that are required by the current context. In making this invitation to the general public to make its submissions to the budget for 2016, Minister Ravi Karunanayake has displayed a level of maturity and wisdom that I have not seen in our local politicians ever before. I hope that a large number of people and a large number of organizations will come forward with their contributions to the budget for 2016, and I hope that as a result, the budget that emerges will be one that is holistic, rich, and diverse, so that it addresses all the issues that have to be addressed. And as a gesture of support, I have put forward my own recommendations, which I hope will help others to think deeply about what is required and articulate these requirements so that the budget that finally emerges will be a comprehensive and an effective one. Any budget or any initiative must be based on a policy. And the policy that I recommend as the foundation of our budget should be the thoughtful and carefully timed realization of the potential that is offered by the geostrategic location of our island. I recommend this policy because this potential that is offered by the geostrategic location of our island affects the whole human species. This potential is not our private property alone. It is not our national property alone. It is something that is required by the entire human species, and it is something that is urgently required. And this urgency arises from the fact that the population of the human species has grown. I say that it has grown. In addition to the fact that it has grown, it is still growing. And our best estimates show that it may reach something like 10 billion individuals before that growth begins to slow. But my concern is because of the size that it has already reached, 7 billion people, and the resources that are required to support the lives of those 7 billion people. And in order to support the lives of those 7 billion people, technologies are required, culture is required, and their resources are required. The task of ensuring that technologies are preserved and developed, culture is allowed to grow, and resources are made available for consumption, demands that the potential of our island be realized. I am not saying that that is the only thing that has to be done, but it is one of the most important things that has to be done. Because if you look at the geostrategic location of our island, you will realize that it forms a natural center linking the countries on the rim of the Indian Ocean and the countries on the western side of Southeast Asia and the countries of South Asia. So there is an arc from Australia to South Africa, and we are the center of that arc. And if you look to the south, there is the Antarctic. So we can even make that arc into a circle of which we are the center. And as the center of that circle, we are quite naturally the platform on which the strategic function of the global developmental process, as it impacts upon these regions that we link, will be housed. That is not all. It is quite natural that this center will act as the entrepot to investments flowing into the regions that it links, and as a marketing platform for the products and services that are produced in these regions that it links, and as a transshipment hub for those products and services that are produced by these regions linked by the island. It is not very difficult to see this, and it is not very difficult to realize that this potential has to be realized, and that if we fail to do so, we may be forced to do so, or somebody else may do so. Realizing this potential involves many challenges. It means having to deal with powerful nations whose interests and whose positions will be impacted decisively by the realization of this potential, and whose concerns have therefore got to be taken into account, and whose fears have to be allayed. But whatever the difficulties may be, the potential of our island has to be realized, and this budget has to reflect very clearly and signal to the world with no room for doubt that we understand that this potential that we are aware of has to be realized in the interests of the continued survival and evolutionary development of the human species. So the realization of the potential of the island is the fundamental policy that is going to drive our budget, that should drive our budget, in my opinion, and I therefore recommend that this policy be made the foundation of our budget for 2016 and budgets in the years to come. We then need a strategy based on this policy. What are we going to do in order to lead to the realization or implementation of this policy? That is what a strategy is all about. A strategy is certain actions that are taken in order to realize a policy. So what are the actions that we need to take in order to realize this policy of realizing the potential of our island and its geostrategic location? I have made a small list of the core activities, the core actions. I would say the core developmental actions that have to be taken in the form of an outline.